It's
Yes.
not my job to call you and make sure you woke up this morning. It's not my job to make sure you took a shower before you showed up to work. It's not my job to make sure you got both of your shoes on, right? Like, it's crazy, but there are people that run businesses. I coach them, and they're like, you would not believe how stupid some of these people are that think they're going to keep a job and can't show up with, the right shirt on.
If you expect your boss to call you because you overslept, reality check, you're getting fired.
What advice would you give to somebody starting their career to make work not suck?
Oh, lower your expectations.
Oh, why? That's harsh, man. You're gonna come out like that? If you are a small business owner, you can't pay your employees more than they make you. The math doesn't work. I see a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I want to make $25 an hour. It's like, great. Do you bring more than $25 an hour worth of value to your employer? Because if you don't, then they can't pay you that and stay in business for very long.
Making work not suck takes two components. So
That's
to
really good.
make work not suck, you know what? I'm gonna throw the rule of three out there.
Welcome to the Make Work Not Suck podcast.
All right, Ryan. So you have, if I remember correctly, you've got two boys. How old are your boys again?
They are 17 and 14.
17 and 14. All right. I've got two boys. They're 12 and 7. So about the same ages apart. Do your boys listen to you, or are they too cool now?
Oh, that's a hard. Oh man, you're coming out swinging. Do my kids listen to me? Do my boys
Mm-hmm.
listen to me? So I would say I've crossed the threshold
Okay.
where there is still a level of dad,
Mm-hmm.
but we're I don't want to say we're buddies because we're not
Okay.
buddies. Like it's definitely like dad first, buddy
Yeah.
second.
Mm-hmm.
But especially the 17-year-old because he's about to graduate high school and has the job and college stuff picked out and stuff like that. Don't get
Cool.
me wrong, I still have to tell them to take out the trash,
Right.
but they have reached a point where they do value the input and do ask for guidance. Not always the case though.
I think I'm a little bit behind you. My boys are a little younger, so I think I'm more dad but starting to try to get into that more kind of more advisor, less boss kind of a role. And so here's the thought I had for us today. You're fortunate that your boys are listening to you, at least a little bit. I don't know if mine are going to listen to me when they grow up, but I think it would be fun for us to record a conversation around career advice. How do
Okay.
we make work not suck for our kids, right? They're not quite entering the workforce yet, but they're coming in the next couple of years. Maybe one day, if we cross our fingers and we're lucky, they'll actually listen to this podcast and hear the advice that their dad has to say for them. But for the people who are starting their career early in their career, or maybe just looking for a little advice, what advice would you give to somebody starting their career to make work not suck?
Oh, lower your expectations.
Oh, why? That's harsh, man. You're gonna come out like that?
So one, Matthew does have a job.
Okay.
So he has entered the workforce. He's been there for roughly 6 months.
Okay.
Now, I'll set a little stage here. Well, there's a little bit of a funny story behind this, but when one, he had no motivation to get a job until the girl, and then it was I need
Oh,
money, so
I
then it
need
became I need a
money.
job.
Mm-hmm.
Secondarily to it, what actually got him the job, and this is the going back to your question of do your kids listen to you? What actually motivated him to get a job is when his mother took his computer away and said, "You can't play video games until you get a job."
Nice.
He had one within a week.
That's motivation's a powerful thing.
Secondary component, this is going back to probably like 10th grade, when he was
Mm-hmm.
not quite old enough to work, but it was within the realm. He like mapped out his expenses and this, that, and the other. And he's like, I got to make $25 an hour. And we all started laughing because the thought of a 16, 17-year-old making $25 an hour is, I'm not saying impossible, but highly improbable. And especially for us that grew up, with minimum wage being $5.15 an hour, I think it's like
Mm-hmm.
7 something an hour now.
Mm-hmm.
He started out, I think he got lucky and he's up to around $10 or $11 an hour.
Sure.
First learning lesson of lower your expectations was you're not going to go you're not going to go get a $25 an hour job as an inexperienced high schooler. So first expectations was set your expectations appropriate on the salary because it's just going to be lower.
It's interesting because there's a lot of talk right now about this idea of livable wage.
Hmm.
And I think it's an important conversation, right? I think we need to pay people appropriately. However, there's another side of that conversation, which is what I would call livable skills. If you are a small business owner, you can't pay your employees more than they make you. Like the math doesn't work. I see a lot of people who are like, oh, yeah, I want to make $25 an hour. It's like, great. Do you bring more than $25 an hour worth of value to your employer? Because if you don't, then they can't pay you that and stay in business for very long.
Oh, 1,000%. And so, I mean, at this point, he came to the realization, he started the job. Again, that was probably a year and a half before he started working that he had this idea of what it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And he's learned how to budget and he's, learning to save and I've got my senior trip and this, that, and the other. So he's making it work. But now that he's in the workforce, he's learning the dichotomy of work of what happens when the boss is not clear, what
Mm.
happens when you have, and now I guess I should ask you the question. I'm talking literal first job. Maybe we need to talk like, or maybe we need to transition into like first real job or adult job.
I think
As
they're all applicable.
right, I agree. So in this case, we're using the teenager getting their first job. And well, let me start with this. I think there is an opportunity for the younger generation to get a job, a probably very narrow availability outside of the traditional retail, fast food,
Mhm.
quick serve, etc. Those are
Mhm.
the ones that are fairly quickly and easy to train, fairly intuitive, low wage, but a high schooler can get into the job fairly well. The training is days, and you're in
Right,
it. Versus something that's going to pay say $25 an hour, you need to be more skilled.
right.
But I do think some opportunities like that exist. So if you are a teenager, I'm not going to say it's impossible to get that $25 an hour job, but you probably got to bring something to the table. And to the point you just said, you have to bring more than $25 an hour of value to whatever that job is. But I'm going to assume there's probably some filing or some computer like data input scanning, maybe some AI prompting or something like that you could do for a law firm or CPA firm or something like that, where they probably would be willing to pay $25 an hour using a computer skill that the average teenager might have today.
Yeah.
But again, you're not going to get that wage at a quick serve restaurant, which there's more of those jobs available. Or go
Those
ahead, David.
jobs are also probably on the decline. I think more and more of those jobs are going to be outsourced robotics, move to the phone for mobile ordering. So a lot of the quick serve um, opportunities, retail opportunities, things like I just think over the next 10 years, those opportunities are going to get fewer, not greater.
Right. So I think the secondary one is think about this. If the first time you were learning to do something, you probably made mistakes. You probably didn't know what you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
There may have been some lazy people in the mix. Like if you joined a soccer team and you probably had some players that didn't practice or didn't really know what to do. Let's be honest, that's the same thing with your first job. And
Mm-hmm.
as my son is learning, is some of these people don't really want to work as hard as they probably should. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a case where there's, in his case, he probably works harder than I shouldn't say than he should, but he's learning the difference of he puts more hard work in. Well, he's gotten a raise and he's
Mm-hmm.
moved to different positions, but he also still notices the people that are not putting the effort in. And so it's like, well, this is what you have to learn is that's what it's called climbing the corporate ladder.
Mm-hmm.
You are doing the extra work, getting recognized for it and getting opportunity. And that person that's not doing it is not getting those opportunities. So don't complain about that person doing less work because you're getting, so his problem was he was climbing the ladder and he was complaining about the other people not putting in the effort.
Right.
But you have to recognize the pay gap now.
Sure.
And so that's where the expectation of everybody is the same or equal or etc. That's why I say lower your expectations.
I would say paired with that, right? Maybe lower your expectations. I would also say the little things matter. Showing up on time, having a good attitude, people enjoying working with you, being nice to customers, like that kind of stuff used to be table stakes. It's not anymore. And that kind of stuff matters. The difference between somebody who's good at their job but unpleasant and good at their job and nice to work with is a big difference. And
Yes.
so you can't always control who you work with or what you're going to get assigned today, especially early on in your career. There's going to be a lot of crap assignments. That's just kind of part of the deal. But if you can do those things well, do them with a good attitude, show up on time, be dependable, and those kinds of things. Like I'm hearing from so many employers now that it is just hard to find people that'll just do the basics like that, and that can differentiate you even within the first couple of hours. So I would say if you want to make work not suck, start with the things that you can control. Be on time, don't smell, have a clean uniform, have a good attitude, be willing to work hard, do what you say you're going to do, and that already puts you in the top 20% of employees right there.
Yep. I think the other one too, and I don't mean this in a negative way when I say lower your expectations. I also think there's a level of, how do I phrase this? When the teenagers are in school, everything is very structured.
Mm-hmm.
When you switch classes, what your assignments are, and there may be some teachers that are a little more loose and some that are a little more strict, but I think everything is very structured. And I think there's a lot of expectation of processes to be clearly defined because we have risen the SOPs in the education system, if you will.
Right.
And then when they get into these small businesses, it's a lot more like figure it out. And so I think there's a level of expectation, just everything is going to be lined out for you. Everything is going to be told, or there's an SOP for everything that tells you how to do it all. And sometimes it's like, here's the mop, here's the broom, there's the floor. Good luck.
Right.
I've heard many teenagers complaining about, well, they didn't tell me how to do that.
Right. I would say this is funny. I was sharing this analogy with a client earlier today. The difference between a pirate ship and the Navy.
Ooh,
Right?
that's a good one. That's a good one.
That's a good one, right? Most small businesses are like a pirate ship,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are no uniforms. There are no rules. You don't get trained. There isn't HR. You don't have a performance review. It's like just survive, right? And if you're in a small business, you're in a business that's doing, I would say, less than $10 million a year in revenue. It is a pirate ship. They are just trying to survive to the next payroll, right? Swing to the totally opposite side of the continuum. These large Fortune 500 multi-billion dollar organizations, they run more like the Navy. Everyone's got a uniform. Everyone's got a badge. There's a standard operating procedure for how you do everything that you could ever be asked to do, and you have to stay within the lines or you're going to get yourself in trouble. There is value in both places to start your career. And I've worked in both of those kinds of organizations, but you've got to be very clear with yourself on the set of rules and expectations that come with that. If you are on a pirate ship, don't expect there to be a lot of training. If you are working for a Fortune 500 company, don't expect a lot of latitude. They're going to tell you exactly what to do. They're going to tell you exactly how to do it. And your answer is, thank you, sir, may I have another? Both are okay. I've known people who've been wildly successful starting at either end of the continuum or somewhere in the middle, but just understand that they're a very different place to start, and there's pros and cons with either approach.
Oh, 1,000%. I think one thing that especially the younger generation, the teens coming up right now, I think there's a, I don't even know how to describe it. Like they like to complain. And I think this is a side effect of the internet. Like everybody has an opinion,
Right.
everybody gets a voice, and I'm not saying that's bad. I just think because I was reading a book the other day and it talks about like how everything on the internet is asking for an input. And so it's just asking people to always just put stuff out there that generates noise. So I think there's especially young, I don't know about the young ladies, but the young men, I see it in a lot of the teenage boys around my son. They love to complain or pick apart or criticize every little thing, someone playing a video game to someone driving a car to,
Right.
watching a movie, ripping
Right.
apart a movie instead of enjoying it. I think that could actually make work suck. If you
Hmm.
bring that behavior into it, I think it can do two things. One, it's going to make you hate your job. Two,
Yes.
you're creating toxicity in your own environment. And three, it can bring others down. Of course, there's also the misery loves company.
Right.
At the end of the day, if you bring that in and you spread that within the organization, there's a high probability you'll be fired or you make yourself miserable. So I think this is where we're you're setting expectations for yourself. Like no job is going to be perfect. And what makes work not suck.
And if it was perfect, they wouldn't want you there because you'd ruin it.
Oh, yeah. No, that too. Yeah. But what makes work not suck is control, like you just said, controlling your own environment,
Hmm.
being in control of your own destiny. People are always going to complain. It doesn't matter where you are in the organization. It doesn't matter what position you're in, what company it is. People are always going to complain. And what can make work not suck is not getting sucked into it.
Yeah.
Show up, do the work, you're paid to do. If they're asking you to do things that you don't feel right or is unethical or something like that, you should leave. But if you're asked to do things within the bounds of the job that you're being paid to do the work, collect the paycheck, and go home at the end of the day.
Hmm.
And if you don't like the pay that's there, find another opportunity. I think there's another piece of advice I'd throw out there is especially a young teenager, don't quit the job until you found the next one, unless there's
Mm.
like an ethics problem or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
There's been too many young teenagers, literally in the past few months, that have quit their jobs that I know because they
Hmm.
thought they were just going to instantly get another one, and now they're hunting and they don't have a job
Yeah. And it's
because
harder than you think.
they think the grass is greener on the other side, and then all they found was more of the same thing they already had.
I would pair this, positive attitude. I would pair that with this idea of being humble. I think it's important, especially early in your career or even early in an organization. Maybe you're a little bit further into your career, but you've just started with a new company. There's a lot of things that might be stupid, or you just might not understand why. And if you go in with the attitude of, well, that's dumb, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. Why are we doing it that way? You get a bad reputation. You get all the benefits of the negative benefits of the toxicity. You make yourself miserable, and you kind of get a reputation of being a negative person. Whereas if you just come in with a little bit of a posture of humility and say, hey, can you explain to me why we do it that way? Or can you help me understand this? Happy to do it, right? Start with the positive. Happy to do that. Can you help me understand the context for this or why we do it this way? It makes you seem like you are hungry to learn, that you're curious, that you want to understand, and that separates you, sets you apart. And every once in a while, you're going to run into somebody who's like, you know what? I don't know why we do it this way. This is stupid. We shouldn't do this anymore. And you'll help them find something. But if you lead with, that's stupid, we shouldn't do that, you're not likely to be successful in that organization. And a little bit of humility and a little bit of curiosity will take you a very long way.
Absolutely. I think there's a level of, I'm currently listening to the book, Ego is the Enemy.
Oh, yeah, that's so good.
Have you done that? Okay, so you've read or listened to that one.
Hmm.
And what I love is the phrase is everything you desire is on the other side of your ego.
Hmm.
And so I think there's a lot of this where ego gets in the way. And I think that's what you're saying is like, keep your ego in check,
Yeah.
like a healthy level of going into these jobs. Because I think if you bring these false expectations into it, it's going to make work suck. And at the end of the day, a job is about providing a service for a fee. If you are the role you're in, you can make it suck by expecting something other than what it is, by either not wanting to do the role and expecting the pay,
Hmm.
or expecting more from the role, or you're doing more above the role and expecting a higher pay, but not getting it because you're doing more than what the role expects. And I
Hmm.
think that's where that ego component comes in, which comes into what you're talking about, that humility. Just have that level of humility
There's
going into it.
there's a whole conversation here around expectations of your job that I think is worth calling out. At least a couple of things. One, your boss is not your parents. Like, the, do not expect them to parent you. They're your boss. So if you didn't have parents or didn't have good parents or your parents didn't do their job and you don't know how to do things like resolve conflict, have hard conversations with people, but still be respectful and professional. Um, the ability to receive constructive feedback and somebody say, hey, you're not doing that right, and be able to take that and not lash out at somebody. Like those kinds of basics is not your boss's job to help you develop those skills. You need to have those. And if you don't, your career is going to get real bumpy real fast.
Well, I'll flip on the other side of that is don't don't expect the boss to be the opposite of that in the sense of like you don't have to put up with a crappy boss.
Also true.
So you do want a boss that's going to provide a mentor. I mean, I think that's one,
Mm-hmm.
especially in an earlier phase. If there's a general manager of a restaurant that does add a little bit of coaching and mentorship opportunity on top of that, I think you want that.
Awesome.
And I think
Right.
the younger generation's really good about seeking that out. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
was less around in our times. I think it's more around in the current generations, and they seek it out more.
They do.
And so I think you should expect a slight level of mentorship. Don't expect
Mm-hmm.
them to be your coach and your mentor and to stop everything to solve all your problems. To like your point,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the opposite is true. Is you should find a you don't want a boss that just expects you to know everything and thinks you're an idiot for not knowing something when it's your first job.
Okay, I think there's a difference between expecting you to know anything, everything, and expecting you to know the basics. It's
Yes.
not my job to call you and make sure you woke up this morning. It's not my job to make sure you took a shower before you showed up to work. It's not my job to make sure you got both of your shoes on, right? Like, it's crazy, but there are people that run businesses and I coach them and they're like, you would not believe how stupid some of these people are that think they're going to keep a job and can't show up with, the right shirt on. Uh, that's what I meant by parenting. Like,
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay,
okay,
that I
that,
agree with. Yes, if you expect your boss to call you because you overslept, reality check, you're getting fired.
right, you're getting
You,
fired.
you,
Maybe your next boss.
work is gonna suck because you
Hmm.
can't wake up to an alarm.
Right. Right. Uh, the other thing that I think is interesting, though, and this is probably speaks more to the younger generation that I think is more interested in feedback. They are more open to coaching and hungry for that development. I think it's important to temper that with the understanding that it's not your boss's job to get you promoted. Like it is your job to grow your career, to figure out what you want and to figure out a plan to get there. Now, there's lots of people who want to help you, but I can't tell you what you want to be when you grow up, nor can I or nor will I open the doors for you to get there if you haven't demonstrated a vision for where you want to go and a hunger to do the work required to get there.
So that's a
And
big distinction there.
okay.
So you're right. It's not your boss's job to build your career path. It's your own.
Hmm.
But it also is your boss's job to help you achieve that career path
Yes.
and maybe coach you on it or give you guidance, etc. But to your point, it's not your boss's job to lay out the 9 point journey for you because you're entitled to it
Right.
or you
Yeah.
think they should do it. You have to do your right. You have to be the one that's in charge of your career, and your
Hmm.
boss should help you get there, not do it for you.
I would say a good boss will help you get there.
Yes.
Many won't. Good ones will. Uh, and but you've got to know what you want, and you've got to know, and you've got to be willing to do what it takes to get there.
Yes.
Right? People that are like, oh, I want to make more money. No shit. Everybody wants to make more money. That doesn't help me, right? What do you want to do? What's the value that you want to add that would enable me to give you more money? And if you can't answer that, then I can't help you. So figure out what's the work that you really want to do, and then we'll find ways to help you get there. And once you get there, you will get paid more. But don't chase the dollar because nobody wants to pay you more unless you're adding significantly more value than the paycheck they're giving you.
Yep. You know, another thing. is I think for older millennials and older, there was a level of just kind of figure it out, and you just kind
Hmm.
of got dumped into the workplace and you just discovered, and to some degree you knew what your path was before you got out of high school, and
Right.
you figured it out. I think there's so many options and so many dynamics for
Hmm.
the younger generation, but here's where I think a gap is. I think the younger millennials and the Gen Z, I think they were forced, like, you have to make a decision in high school and go to college, and you have to know what you want. You have to know what you want to do, and you have to make a selection, or what the hell you do it. And that's what's led to all this
Hmm.
anxiety and
Oh yeah.
fatigue, and I don't know what to do, and etc. I think society put a lot of pressure on them to achieve this perfect path or result without a clear lack of journey. Now, what my younger son is going through right now is, I think this is one of those that, 5 to 10 years of what didn't work well coming back, is they have this career research class they force every kid to go through, and they're
Okay.
literally like, how much money do you want to make? Well, I want to make $100,000. Or what kind of car do you want to drive? What kind of house do you want to live in? Do you want to travel? Like, they ask all these questions. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
you need to make this much money. And then they go over here and they're like, what do you like doing? Okay, here's a career path. And then it's like, okay, you want to be a welder, but you need $200,000 a year. And they're like,
Actually,
so,
welders right now might make
well, yeah,
closer to 200 than some college graduates do. But yeah, I get your
probably.
point.
But it shows the gap. And then they
Hmm.
have to start picking and choosing, like, what lifestyle do I want to have versus what career do I want. And so I do think there's a level of I think Gen Alpha, or the younger Gen Z's,
Hmm.
that are like my 14-year-old son, who's right on the edge of Gen Z, and the
Yeah.
alphas that are right behind him. I think they're going to be a little bit more balanced than the younger
Hmm.
millennials and the Gen Z's right now. So I really think the younger Gen Z's, um, or the yeah, younger millennials and older Gen Zs, I think, are the ones struggling with it the most. Like
Yeah.
my 17-year-old son didn't have any of these options. So I'm just between a
Hmm.
3 year age difference between my two sons. One
Hmm.
has it, one does not. Older son getting ready for college was panicked and trying to figure out what to do and where he wants to go and this, that, and the other.
Hmm.
Younger son is already asking those questions in 8th grade.
I would say always have a plan, but be open to changing your plan. I can't help somebody who doesn't have a plan, right? And so I think it's vitally important that you've always got a plan for what you want to do with your career. You can change that as often as you want.
Is it a plan, or is it at least a direction?
I would say direction may be good enough. It's like I knew for a long time that I wanted to be a CEO. And so I would tell people, I was like, look, I'm not going to get there tomorrow, but I think at the end, at some point in my career, I'd like to run a business. And I've had some great bosses that were like, hey, you want to run a business someday? This would be a great opportunity for you to take a step in that direction. Uh, but they couldn't open the door for me if they didn't know where I wanted to go. And so having some kind of direction, that's maybe a better word, having a direction, say, this is the direction I want to go. And then it is totally fine for you to get 3 steps down the path and be like, never mind, this sucks. I don't like that. I want to go this way. Um, and even in an interview, you could say, look, I took that job because I wanted to do X and I got into X and I realized I hated it. But I really liked Y. And so now I'm here because I want to move in this direction. That is a very good answer in an interview. It doesn't mean you can't change your mind, but if you don't have a plan, nobody can help you.
Well, I think there's so much pressure to have
Mm,
the answer.
right.
It's like everybody's got to, it's like not having the answer is like you're a failure, or you're stupid or
Hmm.
ignorant or something like that. So, and I think, even again, I'll go back to my older son. There was this pressure for them to figure out what they're going to do. It's like, well, we need an answer. We need an answer. We need an answer. You got
Hmm.
to figure out, we need an answer. And like, the universities now are going, look, don't worry about it. Just, do you like the campus? Do you like the people? Do you
Hmm.
like the culture? Do you like what we stand for? Because we'll figure out your career path. Just come to the school, your first year's basics anyways, and we'll help you navigate it. So even the colleges are seeing this shift. But I think what's interesting is, I'm going to take my Vistage chair. He's an engineer turned CEO of a very large manufacturing technology company.
Mhm.
And after he retired from that, he was like, I now have to figure out what I want to do. And so it's like literally like I've I don't want to go be the CEO for another 30 years again. Like
Mhm.
I've done that. And he went through the progress of like, I'm going to just try everything and figure out what I don't like to see what
Mhm.
I do like. And I think that's okay. I mean, that's taking somebody on the other end of their career that doesn't know what they want to do when they grow up,
Mhm.
or their second career,
Her
and
second career.
taking that back to now. It's okay to just try things. If it doesn't
Sure.
work, I think there's also this level of like failure. Like you can't fail. You're not allowed to fail. And I don't know where that's come into our culture, but it's like failure is you can't have success without failure.
Right.
But it's like you're expected to have success without failure. And I think that if you don't have the answer, or if you pick a path and it's failed, then you're a failure in life and you're a disappointment. And I don't know where this has come into our society, but I think it's okay. Like you said, pick something, try it. If you don't like it, pick something else and
Right.
just keep going at it until you find something you like. And you know what? I think if you're going to go with that, take that advice from a younger, try working retail. If you don't like retail, go to quick serve. If you don't like quick
Mhm.
serve, try a sit down restaurant, be a server. Like,
Okay. Question. You've got your boys. How long would you want them to stay with it? Like if they get into it and they hate it, how long would you want them to stick with it before they jump to something else?
I would say give it at least 90 days. But
Oh,
what I've
all right.
said, what I've said is if you don't like it, then find the next job, get the next job lined up, resign from one and go to the other. Don't decide you don't like it, quit and give up and have nothing. So I said I would suggest you stick with it for 90 days. I guess unless there's
Mhm.
an ethical or a moral or
Right.
something like that, right? Like we're
Yeah.
taking all that off the table. But if you don't like it, find the next job.
I like that because you're probably not going to find that immediately. So if you're 90 days in and you realize you hate it, you're probably 90 days from your next job anyways. So it might be a couple of months by the time you're actually making the transition.
I'll give you a real example. There is a grocery chain that is hiring, I think that's about $3 or $4 more an hour than what he makes.
Hmm.
But he found out the amount of effort that they have to put into because he'd be one of those like online shoppers that has to run up and down the store and do all the picking and
Ooh,
this, that, and the other.
that's a
And
lot of work.
he's like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, okay.
Hmm.
So you don't like this, but you don't want that. So you actually are okay with the job that you have. He's like, yeah, it's actually more pace
That's
for what I want.
smart.
It
That's smart.
otherwise grass is always greener on the other side, right?
Yeah. I've I worked with a couple of Chick-fil-A operators and they pay well. Depending on the market. I mean, many of them will pay top of market for high school, college age workers. They're paying 17, $18 an hour. But those kids are not sitting on their phone all day. Those kids are busting it. They are working hard shifts. And you can make more money if you are willing to work harder. But if you're not willing to work harder, have a good attitude, show up on time, do all those things, take more responsibility, you're not going to make more money.
Well, let's be honest. With Chick-fil-A, they pay that top dollar, but those high school kids are standing on the curb in the rain and sun and shine. Now they're protected and they have heaters for the winter and fans for the summer, but they're standing outside taking orders with a smile, no exception.
Right. I've got
So,
clients in the Northeast. They're standing in 2 feet of snow and with a smile on their face, handling change. And I mean, yeah, like you're going to work for it. But that's another great example of they put those kids out there because they're able to run more cars through the drive-through. So they are making more money so they can afford to pay a higher wage. And that's how this works. Like the money just doesn't show up from nowhere. So if you're willing to help your employer make more money, they will likely pay you more. But you've got to make sure that you're adding enough value that they can afford to pay you 18, 20, 25, whatever that is an hour, and still make money afterwards.
All right, let's fast forward a little bit.
Okay.
So we've been talking kind of high school, first job, retail, restaurant, etc.
Okay.
Let's fast forward to college and get into first adult job, paying,
First
the
professional job.
professional job where you've got to pay your own bills. You're basically supporting
Ooh.
yourself. Because the earlier one we're talking about, you're still probably living with mom and dad, or mom or dad.
You're on somebody else's payroll.
You're a lot of your bills are paid for. So let's
Mm-hmm.
fast forward to first job. How can you make work not suck? This is first job. You're paying your way, living expenses, everything. Lower your expectations.
Lower your expectations. Your money does not go as far as you think it will. So no matter how much money you're making, it's not as much as you think it is. Taxes, inflation, like just don't go out and buy that new car the first week you start your new job. Wait until you get a couple of paychecks to see what you actually take home every 2 weeks before you start making major purchases and major lifestyle decisions. I would go again, like I think about my first career job. You know, I had two undergrads and graduated with my second undergrad degree right after 9/11, and so there were no jobs anywhere. And I waited tables for 6 months with 2 degrees. I was really pissy about it. And then finally got my first kind of career professional job. Uh, but I would say that a lot of what I learned waiting tables made me successful in my first professional job. The ability to show up on time, work hard, be humble, be polite, be teachable, uh, be curious, be professional. Those things aren't hard. Like anybody can do those things, right? You don't have to go to school for those things. But it's surprising how many people just don't check the boxes on the basics. And if you don't, you're choosing to play work on hard mode.
Yeah. I think everybody has that problem a little bit, where you get the new job, and so you get the upgraded house and buy the car, and then like the job doesn't work out in 90 days, you get fired, or you hate the job and you want to look for something else, but you can't find a job that pays as much as that. I mean, I think that's just general advice across the board, is whenever you get into a position or a job, like don't rush, like make sure it's going to work before you
Mm-hmm.
debt load yourself
Right.
into a problem. I mean, I think it's just general good advice.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
good financial advice. Not about making work not suck. That's about how to make life not suck.
yeah. I think one thing I would say for a younger generation going into their first job is don't, I mean, you should map out your career path. You
Mm-hmm.
should map out your escalation and what you're trying to do, and your, glide path. I would say don't expect the company to operate on your timeline. Just because you want a raise in 6 months doesn't mean the company wants to give you one in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think you should find out those times and opportunities, and you should constantly work on your path, and you should check in with your boss and make sure those things are there. But I've seen too many people that go, well, I've been here for 6 months and I've done these accomplishments, therefore I should get a raise.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I mean, good on you.
Yeah.
And out, if I'm inside the business, I'm your boss. I'm like, yeah, you're showing great career path and progression, but it goes back down to, is there a seat available for you? Is it the time of year for raises? Like there's cycles for this stuff. There has to be a role available to promote you into.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you did a bunch of achievement doesn't mean, and I think I'm going to use the video game analogy. The kids are, especially some of the boys, they're so used to playing video games and leveling up. And every time they
Mm-hmm.
level up, they get a reward, and they get more and they get more, and they just keep
Right.
climbing that ladder. But that's not how career paths work. I mean, it is, but it's on a mutual time frame, or the business time frame, not
Right.
your own. And I would say just because you've been there for a year doesn't, Fortune 500, yes, go back to the Navy versus the pirate ship, right?
Sure.
The Navy is going to have automatic triggers. You know, as you hit certain ranks and you check certain boxes, you're going to rank up and you're going to go from a, E whatever to an E whatever. And that's got, pay pounds to it.
But that's not going to happen quickly.
No.
And that's okay. But just understand that in large corporations, you don't get promoted every 12 months. Like, that's just not how large corporations work. Small companies can do that, but there's not a safety net there, right? There's not a path, and that's higher risk, higher reward.
Well, I think that goes back to the pirate ship.
Mm-hmm.
The small business may throw too much money at somebody. The pirate ship may elevate someone to first mate that shouldn't be, that's too junior. I mean,
right.
it's the chaos dynamic, right?
Right. They might give you your own ship and then you sink it.
Right. So I think it's not about lowering your expectations or dismissing your expectations. It's about making sure you've got like that plan or that direction, and that you're constantly communicating and checking in and making sure it's on point. And at the end of the day, if you put all the time and energy into it and you've got the skill sets and the business is going to hold you back, find the other job. Like that's the whole job hopping component people go through. And I think we're seeing that a lot right now as people gain skills and they make a lateral hop either in the same company or into another company to keep, progressing. And we're seeing that job hopping more frequently. Which I think is okay if you're trying to progress your career. I think where it happens erroneously is when you don't have that plan mapped out, or again, when your expectations don't align with the reality of your current job.
I would also say that it can sometimes be a function of people who want to advance without accomplishing anything.
That's just a hallucination. That's just
but
luck.
I would say to my boys, when you start your career, especially, any sort of professional career, I would say move as quickly as possible into a role where you own something that matters, right? Something that can be measured, right? Whether it's sales, whether it's a P&L, whether it's some sort of a client go live, or like something that there is a clear metric of success. And you can say, because I was in this seat, this number moved from this to this, right? Those are surprisingly hard to find early in your career. But at the end of the day, 10 years later, no one's going to care how long you were in that seat, whether it was 6 months, 12 months, or 24 months. You're going to say, look, when I showed up, the gross margin on this product was X. When I left, it was Y. And people will be like, dang. That is far more important than how long you sat in the seat.
You know what? That's a really good call out. It's attach yourself to a metric that's going to measure, or that matters. Sorry. Attach yourself to a KPI or metric that matters, that shows that progression, not an arbitrarily one like I clocked in on time every single day. I was in
Nobody
the seat.
Cares.
Yeah, I was in the seat for 2 years. I mean, those are good things. Like, you should always clock in on time. And, if you have been in a role for 2 years, that gives you a level of experience. But I think those metrics are not the ones that matter when it comes to career progression and achieving goals.
Yeah, if you want to advance your career, you have to own something that matters, right? And so that's revenue, that's profit, that's a P&L, a profit and loss statement. That could be a client relationship. It could be a technology platform. Like, there's a lot of ways to slice that, but you need to get as quickly as possible to own something that matters, that has a clear metric of success, because over the long haul of your career, that's what's going to matter more than how long you sat in any one seat.
So I like where this is going. So let's talk about, a number of junior roles or roles that people move into right out of college are typically like account executive or a sales rep or something like that, right? And or even like a client success manager or someone that does client support. One of the biggest mistakes I see, rookie mistakes, if you will, is when people get a great relationship with the client, or the
Mm,
prospect or whatever, but it doesn't actually translate into sales. And then they wonder, like, well, why am I getting fired? Look at all these amazing relationships I built. That goes back to like punching in on time. It's
mhm.
great you built the relationships, but if those relationships don't equate into value for the business, then your paycheck is not, like, the pay to value return is not in balance. And so make sure, building great relationships with customers, prospects, et cetera, is very important. But the key thing is actually getting the revenue from it. Now, I'm not saying, squeeze every dollar you can from it and lie, cheat, and steal to close the sale. Like, I'm not saying that at
Right.
all. But you've got to make sure you're not, valuing the relationship over the metric that matters, the performance indicator.
Yeah.
And I've seen too many junior account executives, support managers, et cetera, been terminated for
Mhm.
lack of performance when they valued the relationship with all the customers.
Right. I've even seen people do that where they value relationships internally, right? They're very well liked, they're very well connected, they're very well networked around the organization. Everyone likes them. And that's great. That's not a bad thing, but there's a difference between results and relationships. And great organizations value both. Good leaders value both. And if you're all about the relationships, but you're not going to deliver results, your tenure there at your organization is going to be a little bit shaky, because if things go sideways financially, you're the first guy they're going to get rid of because you're not delivering any results.
So you're saying the HR recruiters lie to you when they care about your ping pong score more than your work ethic? These tech
Yes.
companies, show up at these tech companies and play ping pong all day. Like, we value the culture over productivity. You're saying those HR recruiters are lying?
I wouldn't say they're lying. I would say it's true until it's not, right? Uh, it's all fun and games until 11,000 people got laid off at Meta a couple of weeks ago, right? Um, you want to know who the people are that still have jobs? They're the people who can tie their job to a hard metric that say, when I was here, that number was X, now it's Y. And if I'm gone, you're not sure what's going to happen to that number. That guy's still got a job.
Yep. 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 I did meet a guy the other day that large multinational, I won't say any names, large multinational organization, Swiss based.
Mm-hmm.
And by implementing a program in one division in the US, saved hundreds of millions of dollars. And
Nice.
then that got implemented globally, that saved billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Ended up leaving the company because there was no incentive for this work that was done. I mean, he got a
Mm-hmm.
decent wage.
Yeah.
And then when everything broke, because they patched the system that broke everything, um, he gave them a consultant rate, which was fair because of the billions of dollars they saved. And they went,
Mm-hmm.
nah. So that was probably, they got like a, 20,000% return.
Right.
Yeah, that
Right.
sucked.
The other thing I would say to my boys about your career is that I would say understand that revenue is harder than you think it is. In an organization, the closer you are to where the money is made, the more your company is going to value you. More than likely, the more you're going to get paid. And I think it's a lot easier to understand how a business really works when you get as close as you can to the transaction, right? I spent early parts of my career in a lot of operational roles, supply chain and things like that. And it's really easy to be like, oh, this is stupid. Why did we do this? Why do we, all these processes are broken, rah, 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 right? A lot of complaining. But oftentimes for me, and I can't say this for everyone, but for me, a lot of it's because I didn't understand how hard it was to close a deal and get a client to pay you millions of dollars to do the kind of work that we were doing. And it wasn't until later in my career that I got into those kinds of roles. And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't care how many bodies I've got to throw at that. We've got to figure out how to get paid, figure out the rest of it later. And I think that there's a lot of people who get really frustrated because they're in HR, they're in operations, they're in a support function within the business. And look, those are great roles. We need to do them. If you found what you're good at and you like it, that's awesome. But understand that at the end of the day, everyone gets paid because of that client sale transaction. And the closer you can get to that, the better for your career advancement.
So you're saying the sales tail wags the operation dog?
In a lot of organizations, it does.
Revenue drives everything.
Revenue drives everything. And it's easy to be like, oh, those sales guys, they just play golf all day. It's like, some of them might, but if they bring in the money, I don't care what they do the rest of Friday afternoons. And just understanding that within an organization, the closer you move to the customer, the more opportunities you're going to have, the better you get paid. And for me, maybe another kind of corollary piece of advice there is if you are in more of a development, not a like business development, but like software development, right? You're in operations, you're in customer success, you're in more of a support function. It might be a good idea for you to start a side hustle where you have to learn some of the sales and marketing skills that are important in your organization. Because that skill of understanding how do you find customers? How do you differentiate versus the competition? How do you keep customers? How do you bill? How do you invoice? How to make sure you get paid for the work that you're doing? Those are the kind of the fundamentals of business. But if you didn't go to business school or you didn't get a business degree and you studied French or you studied software engineering, you might not understand how that stuff works. And if you don't understand how that works, you're going to be very limited in the ability to add value at higher and higher levels of an organization.
That's a good call out because that's just a level of not knowing, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in those other roles, they don't understand what happens on the other side. So it's easy to say, well, it's their problem or they've got it easy and we've got it hard. I think at the end of the day, everybody in the organization has a lot of hard work to do.
Of course.
I think the other side is you were talking about being as close to the revenue as possible. I think there's an opposite side of that is being as close to the expense management side as possible. Because if the expenses, think about how much money some of the finance people make to make sure those expense numbers are in line.
Yep.
And so I think there are two sides of this. Like you don't have to work in like all the money isn't just in the revenue generation side. It's also in the expense management side because, revenue minus expense equals profit. I mean,
right.
Technically it should be revenue minus profit equals expense, but that's a different podcast for a different day.
Different podcast.
So, but if it's revenue minus expense equals profit and the expenses are out of control,
mm-hmm.
companies pay good money to people that can keep the expenses in line with the percentages. Another one that I'll throw out there is I've seen a lot of people get frustrated because they see this inefficiency in a business and they get so frustrated because to them it's so clear if they just fix this one thing, then they could fix all these other problems. I'll give you two components of it. Sometimes it's just a math equation. And as long as the math equation's in balance, it doesn't matter how inefficient the business is because it's above a threshold.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. The other one is there may be something upstream you're missing that inefficiency is by design, or maybe not by design, but it fits into the design because of something else somewhere else you don't see. And you're just seeing a very narrow view. And so I think there's a lot of young professionals that get frustrated because they see those components. And it's kind of the perception is reality is now, if you can bring that opportunity to your boss and you can fix it, that's that's in the win column, right? And if the business is opposite and they adjust it and it's a win and et cetera, rock on. But when the business comes in and says, yep, it is what it is, or don't care, or it's within balance, or hey, there's something upstream that you're not seeing, I see too many young professionals like double down on it. It's like their vendetta to solve it. And all they do is end up making enemies. Sometimes they get fired. They get frustrated, burned out, et cetera. And so I think it's when you run into those situations, like there may be more to the story than you're aware of. So I challenge you to look broader than just get frustrated with that situation.
Yeah. It's usually because that organization has chosen to optimize for something else.
Right.
They're not optimizing for efficiency. They're optimizing for something else. And you might not be privy to that, or you might not have visibility to that, but it's usually not stupid.
So I want to transition to a pirate ship
Okay.
conversation, and you're going to know where this comes from very fast. I think there's a level if you're a young professional and you're in a pirate ship, a small business, and there's an expectation that the vision is got to be perfectly clear and spelt out. Your facial expression just said it all.
Yep.
There is no amount of vision forecasting that can make the vision clear. I think the key thing is if you don't understand the vision and you expect somebody else to make it clear, you're shooting yourself in the foot, and you're only going to build your own frustration, and you're going to make work suck for yourself or others. You have to seek clarity in it. And sometimes you have to work at getting to the clarity.
Right.
It's not like people just magically hide these things or don't want to tell people.
Right.
The visionaries often struggle to convey the vision.
Right.
So if you're in that situation and the vision is clear, don't sit there and go, well, if they just told us the vision more, or if they just did this, or they just did that. What can you do to seek to understand so that you can better understand the vision? Because I almost guarantee you, it's not that the vision is being withheld or they're not trying to tell you. It's because they don't know how to communicate more than they already have. And usually what I've also found is it's not that the vision's unclear. It's the vision is defined at this level that's beneath your threshold, your experience level. And the problem is there's an experience gap between you and where the bottom of the vision is. And what you're doing is you're criticizing the visionary for not bringing the visionary down to your junior professional level.
To your level, right.
Which is a management problem, an integrator problem, and stuff like that. Less of a problem in the Navy, the Navy companies, but in the pirate
bigger
ship
companies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Seek
it's so
to
funny you say
that vision.
Yes. So funny you say this. I was in a strategy session with a founder CEO and in the leadership team this afternoon. And there was a moment of tension because the visionary was like, this is the vision. And somebody on the leadership team said, I've never heard you say that before. And the visionary said, this is all I say. Like, I say this 10 times a day. And what they eventually discovered is that the visionary was doing a fantastic job communicating that message outward to the market, to customers, to partners, to potential employees, all this kind of stuff. However, the internal processes did not exist to take that vision and massage it into every part of the organization. And so there was a disconnect. And he was sincerely saying that regularly and really felt like it was true because it is true to an extent. Could it be truer? Yes, absolutely. It needs to be broken down and worked into the organization. The challenge related to that is there was a lot of passive people who are like, well, you haven't explained to me how this vision, meets my role, meets my responsibilities. It's like, you got to build that bridge from both sides, right? Y'all got to meet in the middle. The visionary has their job to do, but you have a job to do as well, right? You have to take that vision, take an understanding of your role, try to connect the dots, and then ask for feedback on how you're doing, because it's not the visionary's job to explain how the vision pertains to every minute detail of your responsibilities.
Yep. And I'll throw something out there to back that up. There's I think it was a Kobe Bryant reel a friend shared with me on Facebook, and he was talking about, he's like, it's a game of numbers. It's a math equation. If you show up for basketball, if you practice 3 hours a day, every single day, after a year, how well are you going to be? After 2 years, 3 years, etc. Whereas if you take another person that only practiced, maybe an hour twice a week for 1 year, 2 year, how well are they going to? What's the gap going to be?
Huge.
Okay. Now let's take this into the professional world. If you've got somebody that's been in a professional world for 20 years and you've been in a professional world for 5, how many more reps do you think they have? How much more knowledge do you think they have? That doesn't make them smarter, better, whatever, but they've just been playing the game far longer than you have. They've got the experience. And I think what happens in that, in a junior professional coming into a small business world, is they can't grasp the vision because
Mm-hmm.
they lack the experience to understand it, and they
Mm.
expect that visionary to bring it down. This goes back to like, don't expect them to be your parents. They
Right.
expect the visionary to spell it out in crayon for them,
Mm-hmm.
when at the end of the day, what you need to realize is you still have a lot of learning to do. You are still a student. Just
Mm-hmm.
because you graduated college and started a job, or you've been in a job for 5 years, does not mean you have a black belt. Or, you know what? Maybe you will. You know, you're Six Sigma, you get your black belt. But you know what? There's actually degrees of black belt. And most karate instructors would say, when you get your black belt, now the real learning begins.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a level of, this goes back to, I know we joked and started with lower your expectations,
Mm-hmm.
but the reality is set proper expectations that meet reality. You don't have the experiences yet. You
Mm-hmm.
are learning. You have to continue to learn. You're not going to be a master in 2 to 3 or 4 years. You may master a skill, but you're not going to master a career against somebody that's been doing it for 20, 30 years in that same set.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you don't expect career escalation on your time frame. It needs
Mm-hmm.
to be in partnership with you and the business, or you need to find another job.
Right.
You shouldn't expect your boss to spell everything out in crayon for you, and you shouldn't expect your boss to be a jerk, asshole, and you know, abuse you. Right?
Right.
It's
And I would
it's
say
finding
you
that
should
dichotomy.
expect your compensation to rise at a similar rate to the value you're adding to the organization.
And I think
And
tie it back to those KPIs that matter.
the easiest way to know your value to the organization is to own a number, some number, right? Whether it's server uptime or sales or profit or expense or customer satisfaction, like some number. That is the easiest way for you to know whether what your value is to the organization. And the bigger the number, the more important the number, the more you're going to get paid. And at the end of the day, don't we all just want to get paid more?
Yes. We just kind of wrapped up our notes there. Any final thoughts, closing thoughts?
Attitude matters, right? The basics matter. Understand how the business works, right? Begin trying to move closer to where the revenue comes from, because that's going to help you understand the context for just about everything that happens in that organization. So the closer you get to the customer and to revenue, the better you're going to understand why things work the way they work. Get to a point where you own a number as quickly as possible. You know, be professional, be friendly, but value both results and relationships. You have to do both. If you're only one or the other, your career will get off the rails pretty quickly. The last piece of advice I would give is the world is changing very, very quickly, and technology is, man, just ravaging a lot of industries and places. I would say career wise, it would be wise to keep as many options available as possible rather than specializing too quickly, too narrowly. Like if you know what you want to do, you're really passionate about it, knock yourself out. But if you're unsure which path you should take the path that leaves the most doors open. So, for example, when I graduated from college, my high school offered me a teaching job to come back and be a math teacher and a soccer coach. Here's what I thought was interesting. I had studied zero teaching things in college, right? It's not what I studied. I studied engineering. Schools will always hire engineers to teach math. Engineering firms never hire teachers, right? So engineering gave me the option to do both. But if I had chosen to become a math teacher, I close a lot of doors that you can't get back open again, or it's really hard to get open. So as you're making career decisions, that's both educationally, but then also professionally, look for those opportunities that let you own a number, that you own something of value, and that keep your options open so that when you have done that role and you've had some success, you have more opportunities available to you than less.
I like it. I like it. So you started this out with How do we make work not suck? Let's do a podcast that our children will listen to for career advice that will, be life lasting. And so I think we've covered a wide range there. And at the end of the day, the whole goal is to make work not suck.
Mm-hmm.
Making work not suck takes two components. One, you have to own the success of your career. And two, you have to do it with others, but others can't do it for you.
Oh, that's good.
So
that's
to
really
make work not suck, you know what? I'm gonna throw the rule of 3 out there.
Go for it.
This was part of something I heard. I'm going to butcher this. It was plus, minus, and equal. To help advance your career, have someone that's ahead of you that you can learn from. Have peers that are equal with you that you can clash with, not negatively clash with, but positively clash with to push each other. And find people that are beneath you, because there's always going to be someone behind you that can learn from you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can find that balance in your professional career, you will in fact be better, you will grow, you will exceed, and you will become better. And it will make work not suck for more people than just yourself.
Awesome. So. And boys, if you're listening to this, listen to our advice, but don't repeat any bad words that Mr. Hodges and I said.
Yes, don't repeat our words. And I would say for the listeners, if you have a story or piece of advice or something like that, please drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear. And we look forward to the next one.
Yeah, thanks.
Make work not suck. Our podcast that talks about exactly that. Our process, vision, journey, culture, and results. We present real-world business solutions that make the difference. Our goal is to make work not suck. Hosted by Ryan Hodges, co-host Daniel Steer. Join us each episode and make work not suck.